Chloe Valdery took me to task on Twitter, gently, as she always does. But she said, we should be careful, there are multiple movements. And
Yes.
I responded to her that I don't see multiple movements. I see factions, but I don't see multiple movements. I see a coalition. But anyway, the question here is this. I would love to think that there are multiple movements that are actually vying for narrative here, because actually were a movement that made sense to emerge from this by virtue of those who had superior understanding and capacity to reason were to triumph, that would be great. I see no possibility of it happening because the mechanism by which the movement figures out what it stands for barely exists. Even Black Lives Matters has a central organization, but anytime you point to that central organization, people say, oh, but that's not Black Lives Matter. That's one entity. There are other manifestations. And so without leadership that is recognized by the movement, there's no one to negotiate with, there's no one to reason with, there's no one to rein in the abuses. And because of that, it is certain to be a disaster, and it is certain to cause the backlash on the other side, which will be every bit as ugly.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. And I don't know, it's hard to know exactly what movements versus factions means in terms of the distinction. But to return very briefly to a point that we spent a fair bit of time, what is trans ideology and trans rights activists doing so prominently in the Black Lives Matter movement when that would seem to be antithetical to their main principle? So I've just got three images to show, not quite, Zach, that suggest that at both the top of social media and in politics, we are already seeing a change in messaging from Black Lives Matter to Black Trans Lives Matter. So here's Zach, if you put up my screen. Here's the official Twitter account, as of yesterday, has changed its bio to read Black Queer Lives Matter, Black Trans Lives Matter, oh, by the way, third, hashtag Black Lives Matter.
So wait, let's just stop and process that. That is the official Twitter account.
That is the official Twitter account. That is the bio of the official Twitter account. Okay? The official Twitter account also tweeted this. This is on a billboard. So they retweeted, quote tweeted, I guess. Black Trans Lives Matter, that's all. That's the tweet. Okay? And then the mayor of Seattle, who's doing such a brilliant job with Chaz Chow, I can never pronounce it right, who I guess I have not looked into her, but I guess she may be a lesbian herself even, not that that matters at all, except check this out. She tweeted, "This Pride, we can celebrate how far we've come, but we must recognize how far we have to go. We cannot rest until our trans community, particularly trans women of color, have full freedoms and do not have to fear hate, violence, or persecution. Hashtag Pride." Particularly trans women of color. Particularly trans women of color.
Yeah, it's
this Pride, let's focus on natal men. Let's do that.
Yeah.
But put aside the racial thing. I mean, none of us are supposed to be allowed to do that right now. But I kind of don't even want to go there, right? Why is everyone feeling not just empowered, but forced to focus on men who have declared themselves women, often without any other evidence to support the idea that they are, and saying that that is the new face of progressivism and enlightenment? You can take it down.
So let's do this another way, because undoubtedly there are black trans women, which is to say people born male who have transitioned to female. Undoubtedly, that's a demographic. However, the category includes presumably any black man who wants to say that he is now a woman. So that is a loophole. If this is the pinnacle of what we must be fighting for, then any black man can opt into it, which is a frightening prospect. And again, I don't think we know the full meaning of what's going on, but it is conspicuous that Evergreen's meltdown was led by 3 black trans women, which is to say, people born male transitioned to female, who led the collapse of our college and the attack on us. So something is going on here. The fact that there was a major demonstration in New York, that the George Floyd rallies were continuing apace, and then black transness was the focus of the second eruption of rallies. Why is this our second priority? This, at most, it's a tiny demographic, and I'd be hard pressed to tell you what the concerns are, what it is like to be in that category, but nonetheless, there's something conspicuous about the fact that this is like the flagship identity of this movement.
So to Chloe Valdery's point, there is something going on, largely behind the scenes, that is to your point, maybe one faction within this larger movement, or maybe a wholly distinct movement that is cloaking itself in the mainstream Black Lives Matter movement and pretending to be that same thing and thus getting in, that is very explicitly about this hyper niche demographic that is growing, such that it's got to be the fairly rare person, at least living on the coasts at this point, and probably in any city, who has not run into the idea of trans lives mattering in the last few weeks. And this is not a demographic that warrants such remarkable attention otherwise. So maybe we should stop that for now and return to this another time, because there's a lot more to say.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said, but I think the fact that at some level the intersectional logic, which was never coherent to begin with, nonetheless effectively specifies that the if this movement is really about, and the last shall be first and the first shall be last, then the top of the pyramid will be black trans women, by virtue of the fact that they have opted into 2 categories. That is to say, that these are people who have opted into the protected category trans and the protected category woman, which is a remarkable feat.
Yeah, if you can opt in to the top of the new oppressors, lots of people will.
Lots of people will. It depending on what life you're living, maybe that's a sweet deal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. Perhaps it is time